So welcome to this experimental kind of video that I've decided to try making about Portofino development. Uh, this will be hopefully a series uh, where I showcase some coding on Portofino. It would be sometimes developing new features, sometimes fixing bugs, whatever. And I hope to give uh, some insight uh, about what's happening uh, in the development of Portofino. In this case, I'll be showing a new development that has been in the making for quite a while, and I've been working on it in my free time. It's not part of any planned release yet. This may become something that comes out as Portofino 6 at some point in the future, or maybe it will be something that never comes out. I don't know. It's an experimental branch, and what I've been working is to change how the model, Portofino's model, is represented in the application and stored on disk. So um, uh, we know that Portofino's model has always been stored as an XML file. Initially, it was a single file. Then we split it over several files to make it more manageable. And in these XML files, we have an object model that basically directly maps to database structure and enriches this structure with some extra information. And what I've been experimenting with is a new representation, which is not uh, database centric anymore. Rather, it's object centric, let's say. So it defines entities and properties and relationships, uh, and only as annotation we have database specific information. And in particular, I'm not using a proprietary format anymore to represent these entities, but I've decided to use EMF by Eclipse because it's an established technology. It's um, quite niche, but there is quite a on the other hand, there is quite a lot of research and development and tools to work with the EMF. So, and in particular, it can be exported and to several formats, and it's interoperable. So maybe in the future it could be possible to design your model outside of Portofino, then import it in Portofino, or maybe still generate it using Portofino and the wizard and whatnot, and but maybe use some external tool to analyze the model, to enrich it, to manipulate it, generate stuff, and to persist this structure on disk. I didn't use any existing EMF format because they tend to be verbose, XML based, and generic, and not specific to what we do in Portofino. So I decided to design a small language, kind of a DSL, to represent these models. It's nothing fancy. It's really run-of-the-mill stuff, but this is an example. This is all a work in progress, but just to show what we have so far. So enough talking. What I'm doing tonight is part of my work on this new model, and in particular, I'm migrating how database columns are represented, and because we, as I said earlier, we are moving. I am moving from a model which is database centric and then adds some more information to a model which is object centric and then adds some database specific information as annotations. So here we have a column, the column object in the model, and it has a few database specific fields, but these have no correspondence in the DSL. So I'm moving this information to an annotation, which is this one. I've already moved the sum fields, column name, JDBC type, and column type, and I'll be moving other fields now. It's worth noting that in migrating the Portofino's model to this new format, I've used so far I've used somewhat of a facade pattern. So I have this new model which is not database specific. It deals with entities and properties and relationships, attributes, annotations, and whatnot. But I still want to keep the previous interface, the previous object model that is in use in Portofino up to version 5, and so which deals with tables, columns, schemas, and so on, foreign keys. And this has two reasons. One is to simplify the migration, but this could be something that is only temporary. But then there's also a longer term goal, which is to continue supporting previous versions of the model. So the idea is that you could take a Portofino 5 application and load it in this hypothetical Portofino 6, and the model will be parsed and interpreted correctly, and then upon save it will be saved in the new format. So we have to have still a mapping, an object model that maps to the legacy XML model. And what happens behind the curtains is that for each database specific object there is at least one or possibly more generic entity relationship objects. So for example, here we have a column, but the relevant information is actually stored in an attribute, a property, which will have a name, a type, an owner, and so on. And we also have this column info annotation, which will contain all the information, the database specific information that used to be stored as fields in the column. So Here, for example, let's remove nullable, the nullable property, and we can we see that here it's used in 3 places, and here in the toString we can just say is nullable, so use the getter. But here where we use the field, we'll store this information in the annotation. So already there's some logic in place that initializes the annotation when the column is created and so on, and it keeps everything in sync when you synchronize the model, or a bunch of bookkeeping stuff. Here we'll set the nullable property of the annotation with of course this takes a string, so string value of nullable, and here it will return column info and get property value nullable, and this is of course is a string, so boolean value of there should be some parse boolean. There should be some null handling return represents a value true if the string argument is not null, and so this can be null. So that was the thing that I wasn't sure about, and is equal ignoring case to the string true. So if the annotation doesn't contain anything about nullable, then this will be false, which is coherent with what was happening before, where we had a boolean field that of course as Java rules dictate is initialized to false, so if you don't say anything this will be false. We can do the same with auto increment as well, and we only have it here. We have to check with the annotation, so it's called auto increment. Maybe it could be a better design decision to have these names stored as constants somewhere, but for the moment I'm just introducing some technical debt like this because I'm lazy. Anyway, we have tests, so this is auto increment. And then we also have length and scale. We can do both together. This will be get length, get scale. I hesitated here because I was not sure that the annotation is already set up at this point, but I see here there is already a get column name, so I already tested this. So here I'm working on this in my spare time, so I don't always remember what I did the time before, because maybe it was like a few weeks before, but yeah, this should be integer parse int column info get property value length. Let's check that length is here. It is. So this I'm pretty sure it will not accept null. Yeah, it doesn't say it, but I'm pretty sure. An exception is a number of type number format exception thrown if the first argument is null. Okay. Okay, so it won't accept null, I think. Yeah. So maybe here it's worth protecting this with a test, because this could be null, or however, or anyway, as it was coded previously, at least in theory, this could be null. So let's preserve this. And column info, set property value, length, string value of length. This, if it's null, it will return the string null. So we need to length. If length is null, then we want null, as we want string value of but maybe we can just have length like this, length to string, because it won't be null anyway in this case. And we can do the same with scale, with the scale property. Let's rename this code occurrences scale. Here it's scale, and the same holds for length. Scale. So I didn't talk, I talked definitely too much in the beginning. But even by talking too much, I didn't actually say why I'm doing this, why I think that this is a useful development, why wouldn't the current Portofino model be enough? And probably it is enough for what it's used for. But I think that a more general model, besides the EMF advantages that I talked about earlier, that are, I think they're relevant only if one is already somehow using EMF in their process, in their application. Otherwise, for the typical Portofino developer or application, probably it doesn't matter if it's EMF or not. But besides that, EMF brings some features that I think are beneficial. For example, you can have listeners on the model, I think, and this could be something that is useful in Portofino. And also this is some sort of vision of mine. Some tests failed, so let's check that. This is some sort of vision that the model should be more important in Portofino. It used to be very important in Portofino 3 because everything you did was and when designing the application was an operation on the model. So invalid application annotation, why is that? No such method exception, why? Nullable. Oh yeah, because I didn't actually, it's right. And so what was I saying? Sorry. I'd like the model to be more important in Portofino, something that that actually applications make use of. So now what happens in Portofino 5 and 4 also is that the model is there, you know it's there. Sometimes you have to maybe add some stuff in XML or edit some stuff through the GUI, but most of the time the application doesn't actually do anything with the model explicitly. It's just Portofino does everything under the covers, and the application doesn't typically query the model or save configuration or code, let's say, structure in the model. And I think that's a wasted opportunity. I think Portofino being based on the model, which can be modified at runtime on the fly, and the application reflects that is still today is still something that makes Portofino different from most of the competition. The competition has changed over the years, and Portofino has changed too. And nowadays we see a return of so-called no-code or low-code platforms, but a lot of these either do code generation, so you edit some model, then generate code, then run the generated code, and so it's everything happens in a single direction. So the generated application has no way of querying the model or updating the model. Or maybe they do stuff at runtime, but they're cloud offerings that hide much of the complexity from users, and so maybe under the covers they actually have these kinds of reflective capabilities, but they're not being used very much. And I think Portofino could fill this niche where you have full control over your application, starting from the database and going up, and you have this rich reflective model that stores information about the application. For example, one thing that we could do in the future, of course, there has to be some sort of consensus among the developers of Portofino. This is just an idea of mine, but we'll have to discuss about this. But what we did for the GUI in Portofino 5 was to somehow mimic Portofino 4. and this was done to save time, basically to save development time, to avoid another lengthy cycle of prototyping and designing. We said, okay, we already have a design, let's port it under the new architecture, and let's keep it as it is as a starting point. Then maybe we'll revise the design. And so the Portofino 5 GUI inherited this architecture that we had in Portofino 4, where you have pages that are, and the structure of the pages is comes from a structure on the file system. Or so you have a directory that contains another directory, and that gives that structure, makes it so the page A contains page B. Let's say directory A contains directory B, and then page A contains page B, and then you have in the URL A/B, and this works when you have a, like Portofino 4, an MVC application. It's not so well integrated when you have something like Portofino 5, which is a client, is more of a client server, rich client and server kind of architecture. And so it would be more idiomatic and a better design if this GUI structure information wasn't stored in a web application, which has to run in parallel with the backend, and maybe sometimes it's the same web container, it's the same process, but conceptually it's a separate. You have the backend, you have the front end, and then you have this thin layer that sits between the two and tells the front end how it is structured, and also the front end can self-modify, and that's a bit of a kludge. So it would be really, in my opinion, a better design decision to store this GUI structure information in the model. And so you would have a single point where to store every information about the structure of the application, which is mutable and which can be queried and which can be altered during the lifetime of the application. Now I'm launching the demo TT application because I want to check that this modification that I've done actually results in a viable model. So I think here, no, here I already have the old model, the new model. So this is not okay because I won't have this column information as it is. So I have to stop this and to copy this from the sources, or I would have had to rebuild the application, but building a front end is slow. So let me just copy this. I know it's not the most engineered solution. I should really write a script for this, or maybe a Maven goal, but again, I'm lazy and I lose more time being lazy than actually I should automate stuff more. Sometimes programmers have this bad habit of automating too much, and maybe automating stuff they'll only be doing once or twice, and so they will spend like 10 times automating the thing than doing the thing. but I'm the other way around, and I exaggerate the other way around. So I'm lazy. I know this stuff could be easily automated, but I don't I don't want to. Um, I don't want to. Basically, that says it all. So I think the address is this. So first, so this will load the old model version in XML, and then I'm going here and changing some table, and so I have this information. Okay, I'm gonna save it. Saving this should hopefully okay, so name. So maybe some place it's name, some other place it's column name. No, it's name, but okay, so this is probably a bug because because the thing is that name has no default. So, but I didn't want to serialize the name always, because often it has the same value as the property name. So at some point you have I have some logic that says yeah, okay, it's here. If it's the same as the actual property name, then remove it. Otherwise set it. But this doesn't work, because if I remove the name, then I won't be able to save the annotation. Or actually, no, I won't be able to construct the annotation. So either I should say that this is default empty string, and then somehow when I save it, or when I init the column, then maybe I should say I should remove it. So here this will never be null. Default value. No, this won't work. So I should say here, should say this. This is column name and string utils default if empty column name get actual property name. So if it's empty, it will return the property name. So it should never be null, actually. I don't think it will be null. But okay, this is just a test, so let's leave it. But now what happens when I save it? Because the annotation will have that where was it? Make. No, it was annotation factory. So who calls this? Because now I gave it a default, but then when I save the annotation, I will get default there. So maybe I should do this. Set column name, get column name. So this is cryptic, so let's comment it. Reset column name, so that if it's equal to the property name, it's removed. But I don't want to do this here. I want to do this after the property name has been set. So here it's not saved in the annotation. Okay, so this should actually, so now we can see that we have this here. Auto increment is false. Okay, now this is very verbose, so another thing that I'll do will be just to shorten this, but for the time being I need the full type. So let's see if this works, and if it does, we can call it quits, and if it doesn't, we can call it quits as well, and I'll fix it in another iteration. I hope this has been interesting. I hope this wasn't too dense and I didn't take too much stuff for granted. It's hard to say enough but not say too much, so I really hope I did provide some information or at least entertain you. And okay, so here we have scale 0. Who knows if it was 0 everywhere before? I'm not sure. I will have to check. Anyway, I can save this, and what is this? Projects. Okay, so I can maybe change. I'm not sure this works. Oh, this has remained string, but yeah, I'm not sure because this was this was in Portofino. It was the other way around, so this information was stored the main piece of information was the database type, and then you had the Java type. But then now we have the Java type as the main piece of information and the database type as an annotation. So this UI doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense anymore. I think, or anyway, this has to be designed, because auto means that the property, the Java type is not set, so it's derived from the column type, but that's not the case anymore. Now the column type is actually always set, but we'll see. This will be the topic of another iteration of another video. And okay, so I'm stopping this now, and I hope it has been entertaining and insightful and whatever, and not too long, not too verbose. Let me also commit this stuff, so you'll have more. You'll have a reference. You'll see the result of this session. Actually, I started. You see many more files modified because I had already started this. So this is a model DSL, store column information in a dedicated annotation, and maybe I think there was more here, because I also I also did the same with also support selection providers. I also did a similar thing to selection providers, storing information in an annotation. Foreign key, what I did, the same thing basically. Okay, so yeah, that okay. That is not a super informative commit message, but yeah, I should have split the commit into more steps, but yeah, this is what we get. So thanks for watching, and you'll see this commit pop up in the Portofino source repository in the model DSL branch, feature model DSL, I think this is, and yeah, feature model DSL. And that's it. Thank you. Bye. See you next time.